Welcome. Welcome. We are going to hear from the Rising Stars 2026 of the Texas Storytelling Festival. Now, I am dressed like this because we are all building the future of TSA. And the people we have here today are the ones that are helping to build that foundation that's going to continue on into the future. And we are so happy to have them here today. Our first rising star is Dusty Deen. He is a father, an animator, and a storyteller. His stories often explore the pivotal moments that define his evolution. He finds humor in uncomfortable situations, tracing the paths we choose to leave behind and the ones we are truly meant to live. See his work and find out more at dustydeen.com. So from the Storytellers of New Mexico, help me welcome Dusty Deen with his Rising Star presentation.
Thanks, sir. Hello, how is everyone? I hope y'all are well. Good, good. Hope everyone's taking care of themselves. I've been trying to take care of myself lately. I had a checkup with the doctor, and the doctor said you need to get more cardio into your lifestyle. And so something you should know about me is that I'm thrifty. That's what they told me to say. And so I'm trying to find a way I can get this cardio in without having to also pay for a gym membership. And it comes up that I should try running. You know, got a pair of shoes. There's no barrier to entry. Just go outside and start running. So I do. But the thing about running is that I hate running. It's like my body hurts. I'm out of breath constantly. I just really slow. I'm having a hard time, but I'm stubborn, doctor's orders, so I stick with it. And somewhere along the way, I get an ankle injury. And so I convince myself if I get the recommendation from a professional, like a doctor, that I shouldn't be running anymore, it would give me the excuse I needed to stop running. So I go to the doc and I'm like, what do you think, doc? Probably should never run again, right? And she said, no, you're fine. Stay off it for a couple weeks and start running. I said, cool, thanks. So I keep running and I keep hating it. And eventually, one of my friends talks me into doing a 10K race, which is 6.4 miles, right? So to runners, that's not a big deal. But to me, that is an insane distance to try to run. But I'm stubborn. I try, keep going at it and keep doing it. And somewhere along the way, someone says, you got to get a good pair of running shoes for race day. A light pair of shoes could help you perform better and be faster. And I hate this idea from the beginning because these shoes are expensive and I ain't trying to spend any money. But I bite the bullet, decide I'm going to buy the shoes. A couple weeks before the race, I'm down in Austin visiting a friend, and I'm telling him this, and he says, I got the perfect place for you to go. It's called Run Texas. And what they do at Run Texas is they'll measure your gait and stride and get you the perfect pair of running shoes for the specific way that you run. I say, great. So we go to Run Texas. We meet the salesman, Jay. We tell him, he says, yeah, come on over. They got about a 30-foot track there in the store. And he says, jog down there and jog back. And he's crouched down watching me. And so I jog down, and I jog back. And on the way back, he's looking a little cross. And he says, could you just do that for me one more time? Yeah, sure. So I jog down, and I jog back. And now he's looking really confused. Like he does not know what's going on. And I say, is everything okay? And he's like, yeah. We're gonna call over Alex. Alex has worked here for like 10 years. He's seen it quite a bit. He's gonna help us out. So he calls him over, and now I got two dudes crouched down watching me running. And I'm thinking something is a little off, but okay. So I run down and I jog back, and on the way back, both of these dudes look completely lost, like so confused. They're looking at each other. They're looking at me for some sort of confirmation. I don't know what's going on. And so I asked, what's up, guys? And they said, we're going to have to call Ron. Who is Ron? Oh, Ron's a true professional. He's worked here for like 40 years. He has seen it all. He's going to know the perfect pair of shoes to get for you. And so they call him Ron to the running track. And I see Ron's office door open from across the store. And to me, it kind of felt like Ron hadn't just worked there for 40 years, but maybe like he had never left this office for 40 years. A puff of smoke came out of the door, and from it emerged Ron. And Ron is grumpy. He's mumbling and grumbling, I can't believe it, and he's making a big show of it, and they got to bring Ron a special chair so he can sit and watch me run, and everyone in the store is starting to notice, and a crowd is starting to form, and I feel like Ron is the king of Run, Texas, and he's like, run for me, boy, and I'm like, okay, I guess I got to do this, and I'm feeling, needless to say, a little self-conscious at this point, like something funny has happened, but I don't know what, but tell myself, Ron's going to figure this out. That's what he's here for. Take a deep breath. Jog to the end of the track. And when I turn around, I see Ron bound from his chair and start to storm off as he yells, no, 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 no. No one runs like that. We ain't got no shoes for that guy. And I'm baffled. I don't know what's happening. And side note, I don't know if you guys know this about salespeople, but they will sometimes lie to you to sell you something. And this place's whole thing is to sell me shoes. But apparently I run so awkwardly that they ain't even got no shoes for me. And everyone is looking at me, and I'm feeling anxious and small and a little embarrassed. And my friend is laughing. And I'm like, what's going on, man? And he says, you run like a duck, bro. This is news to me. I never heard this before. And I'm feeling embarrassed. I'm feeling a little bit like I'm feeling right now on the stage, realizing that I'm telling you all this and you're all going to watch me walk off to confirm. And I'm feeling betrayed by everyone my entire life. No one could have tipped me off to this before I got out here and ran in front of Ron. And I was at a complete loss. I didn't know what to think, or how to feel, and all these emotions are rushing through my head. And then it came to me. You said Ron was a professional, right? Mm-hmm. And it's Ron's professional opinion that I shouldn't be running, right? You heard the man, and we ain't got shoes for you either, which felt like an unnecessary jab to throw in at that point. But it did help me to realize that I was finally getting what I wanted. I didn't have to buy those expensive shoes, and with Ron's professional recommendation, I was able to retire from running that day. Thank you. Peace.
All right. Another round of applause for Dusty Deen. Our next rising star is Lou Novak. In the second grade, he listened to scary stories while riding the school bus past the haunted mansions of Newport, Rhode Island. He got to tell his own stories as he got older around campfires with the Boy Scouts. As he became an adult and shipped out, he got to exchange sea stories. It was through the Armed Services Arts Partnership that he got some training and performed on stage in Washington, D.C. From the Houston Storytelling Guild, help me welcome up our rising star, Lou Novak, with his story, Up Periscope.
Well, Up Periscope is dedicated to all the veterans out there, because who knows what they will ask you to do once you volunteered. You see, I was staring out across the water. There were two drowning victims, a little blonde woman and a kind of burly dude, and I had to pick which one to rescue. You see, I was a midshipman at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy in my first year. We had plenty of swim training and life-saving training that first year. In our Navy issue Speedos. And in order to go to sea as part of our training, we had to have a successful life-saving that we had to perform. We had to demonstrate that. And so there I was on the edge of the pool. I had a choice between Lieutenant Sue Peterson, who was a Scandinavian beauty. She weighed about 125 pounds and was 5'7". She looked like she was in the Baywatch cast. And basically, she really got my motor going. And then there was Commander Brown. Commander Brown was 6'2", 225 pounds, taught wrestling, and had a reputation for fighting with his rescuers. So the decision was easy. Commander Brown. You ask, why Commander Brown? I'll tell you why. I had been in the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy for almost a year. That's a 10-to-1 ratio. I was 18 years old, and well, I just couldn't imagine performing a rescue involving my hands and Lieutenant Peterson at the same time. So, Commander Brown it will be. And so, the line to rescue him was real short. And so I got to the front of that line in no time, and I hear from across the water, "Lou, I want Lou to save me." I didn't even know Lieutenant Peterson knew my name. And now I'm 18 years old and a grown woman has actually said, "I want Lou?" That was mind-blowing. But orders are orders. I will go save her. So I did my dive. I swam in her direction. It took about 8 strokes. And then 10 feet from her, surface dive. I'm down and I'm around her ankles. Now, just so you know, when she says, "I want Lou," that turned the key to the motor that I mentioned to you. Yeah, and my motor was going, and it was a stick shift. So I grab a hold of her ankles, and I'm working my way up her calves to her knees. And I was in first gear. And then I had to work my way up her thighs to her hips. And then I was in second gear. Now I had to, with my hands on her hips, I had to position her on my hip in a fashion that did not alert her to the state of my current excitement. And I managed to do that, I think. And definitely in fourth gear at this point. Now it's time for me to put her in the cross-chest carry. This seems dangerous, but I did. Fifth gear, engines going full bore, and I'm stroking, and I think I performed the rescue. She taps me and she says, "You saved me. You pass." "Yes, ma'am." Let her go immediately and went over to the side of the pool, really trying to find a cold water jet. And I wasn't finding one. And I'm moving along the wall, and she says, "Lou, you passed. You can go." "Yes, ma'am. I'm still looking for that cold water jet." I didn't want to get a third set of orders from Lieutenant Peterson. So I'm making my way towards that ladder and thinking about calculus homework. Anything to try to turn that key off. And it wasn't working fast enough. She said, "Get out of the pool, Lou." I'm like, all right. So I climbed up that ladder, and it was apparent that my Speedos could not contain me. And my classmates snickered and pointed at me. But I passed, I performed the save, and I could go to sea. And frankly, in all my years of going to sea, I never had to use that training. But I'll tell you what, there's almost nothing I wouldn't do to hear a beautiful blonde woman yell out across the water, "Lou, I want Lou."
All right, Lou Novak. Our next rising star is Ron Carter. He's a native of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, living in Killeen, Texas. Is a multifaceted storyteller whose work weaves together poetry, rhythm, and living history. A poet, percussionist, and author, he brings stories to life through spoken word, music, and the power of the past. As a historical reenactor, Ron blends careful research with creative expression, transforming history into an engaging human experience that resonates across generations. From the heart of Texas Storytelling Guild, with his titled story, "A Change is Gonna Come," rising star Ron Carter.
Wade in the waters, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Come by here, my Lord, come by here. Come by here, my Lord, come by here. Come by here, my Lord, come by here. Oh, Lord, come by here. Now, folks, I have a story, and it's my story. My name is Daniel McClennan. Some folks know me as Uncle Dan. You can call me Dan. You can call me anything, just don't call me too late for dinner. Now, I was born here in this world in 1849. Now, being a slave ain't all that good. It's not a good feeling. But you see, my old former master, Neil McClennan, and that's who he was, because my daddy, Alf, well, he was, and who else? And his father before him, they also were under Neil McClennan. Well, he owned them outright. But you see, I'm a free man. Because I always wondered about the change that was going to come in this world. And it did come. But you see, they came with some old Union soldier from up north who came down to Galveston telling us black folks we were free. Ha. Well, we free, he said. And he said the Civil War was over. Some president, I think his name was Lincoln, he put together the proclamation, I think that's how you call it, the Proclamation of Emancipation, together for us black folks. But did he really have his heart in it? That's only between him and his God. Now, old Neil McClennan, they tell me that McClennan County is named after him, down there in Waco. And you know, his daughter, Catherine, and they call her Catherine McClennan Davis, she taught me how to read and write. But you see, it's not too much about black folks, especially being a slave, knowing how to read and write. But I was blessed. Now, we used to have problems with the Indians. My daddy, Alf, he lost the ear in one of the skirmishes. For me, I always had a good relationship with the Indians. Yeah. You know, I play the fiddle a little bit. I'm good at it. You name it, I could play it. And my sons, well, they can play the guitar. I was well known in Waco. I always attended all the big gatherings. Folks loved me, at least they pretend to love me. They hired me to play my fiddle. So, and my sons, well, they used to come down and help me out a little bit, playing the guitar along with my fiddle. Yeah, big gatherings and small gatherings all over Waco. I was well known, but I'll tell you this much. When I used to go back and forth, well, let me put it this way. You see, when I broke the apron strings, as they say, or the chains from the bond for my former master, I became very fortunate because I owned my own farm in China Springs. And from time to time, me and my family, well, we used to travel from China Springs all the way to Waco by horse carriage, and we would enjoy the scenery. We would leave from can't see and come back can't see. And sometimes when we could not stay, well, let's put it this way, when we could not make it back in time, what we would do is we would stay over with family. And my brother, well, he had a bar or saloon, whatever you want to call it. And we would stay there sometimes. Yeah, a change has come. I'm a free man now. Folks might even kill you. I laugh every now and then and slap my knee. Yes, thinking those folks trying to hide our freedom from us. Oh yeah. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell Pharaoh, let my people go. No more auction block for me. No more, no more, no more auction block for me. Many thousand gone. Michael, row your boat ashore. Hallelujah. Michael, row your boat ashore. Hallelujah. Brother, please give me a hand. Hallelujah. Sister, please give me a hand. Hallelujah. Jordan River is deep and wide. Hallelujah. Michael row the boat ashore. Hallelujah. Michael row the boat ashore. Hallelujah. And let the house say amen.
All right, another round of applause for Ron Carter. So as you see, these are the rising stars that have been nominated from their guilds. And not every guild sent a representative. So keep that in mind for next year. We would love to have 15 people. We'll make time. We'll make a place in the schedule. But we're sure glad to have these 7 rising stars laying the foundation for the future of TSA. Our next rising star is Johanna Cummins. She is a native of Sherman, Texas, who has made her home in Fort Worth. A lifelong lover of folk tales and urban legends, she loves to listen to others' tales as well as telling her own. From the Tarrant Area Guild of Storytellers, or TAGS, help me welcome rising star Johanna Cummins with A Dark and Stormy Night.
So I am here representing TAGS, the Tarrant Area Guild of Storytellers, which I joined this year in Fort Worth, so we're local. I want to thank Jay McLaughlin, our president, and also Mr. D.C. Cornish, Mr. Gary Whitaker, and Ms. Sharon Manning, who have all been very welcoming to me this year and have done a lot in the past few months to initiate me into the art of storytelling. So I'm very proud to represent y'all. I hope I do you justice. Thank you. I am from Sherman, Texas, which is north of here. It's almost in Oklahoma, and it is very common for people to say that the part of the state that I'm from is Baja, Oklahoma, because we're really more Oklahoma than Texas, even though we wouldn't admit that. So don't tell anybody I said it. I wanted to introduce a little bit of the culture that I grew up with to everybody, because I do love folk tales, although, you know, being from Sherman, we don't necessarily have a lot of folk tales. What we had were more along the lines of old wives' tales, except you couldn't even call them old wives' tales, really, because everybody knew they were true. It wasn't really, they're more like old wives' facts. And, you know, this being Texas, especially this being Baja, Oklahoma, the most prevalent type of old wife fact that we had was about the weather, because right here in Denton, we're almost in Sherman. We're at the far northern edge of the Balcones Fault, which we do have earthquakes here, believe it or not. It's not going to impress anybody from California, but we do have them. We are at the bottom, the very bottom tip of Tornado Alley that stretches all the way up into Canada. And especially along the Red River on the Texas-Oklahoma border, we have spectacular weather. And the amount of time you spend talking about the weather, the amount of time you spend paying attention to the weather, the amount of time you just spend looking at the sky, it's just part of life there, because it matters. And I think this part of the state is not necessarily considered beautiful, but to me, this is one of the most stunningly beautiful parts of the world. Not because of all of the blonde brick buildings, which is our local brick, that matches all of the dead grass in the summer, but because of the sky. You're looking in the wrong direction. You need to look up and see the beautiful sky here. And there's always something going on. Growing up where I did, I've seen wall clouds. I've seen things called roll clouds, which look like big, beautiful buns in the sky. It looks like the sky is tapestry. I've seen colored lightning. I've seen a whole wall of lightning. In Sherman, you know, the city of Sherman was decimated by a tornado in 1898. It's called the Cyclone of 1898, We held the national record for the deadliest disaster until the Galveston hurricane in 1902. It rained mud the morning of the cyclone, we were taught when I was in school. And the sky dawned green, and everyone knew something was coming. And by the end of the day, when the storm finally arrived, there was silence until someone finally came running down Main Street to say that half of the town had been wiped away. And we would visit the city cemetery and go see this, what we called the cyclone graves every year as part of a school field trip. Our local weather station, KXII, our weatherman Dale Jones would visit us at school every year. And I think the territory tellers from Oklahoma can help me out with this, and maybe some people who are local to Denton. We would get run through the drill of all the tornado safety procedures. For instance, should you get in your car when there's a tornado on the ground and clog up the road trying to drive away from it? No. Should you shelter near a window? No. Should you shelter under a highway overpass? Absolutely not. Never. That's the one people get caught up on because they think it's safe, not understanding that it creates a wind tunnel. The safest place you can go is down in a ditch. You heard it from me. But then there are times when the people of Sherman, because of our old wive facts, knew better than Dale Jones. We loved him, but we knew better sometimes. Should you, when there is a storm hitting the river, get in your boat and go to the middle of Lake Texoma and go striper fishing? Yes. Because you see, we know better sometimes than the National Weather Service. And everyone in Sherman knows that when Lake Texoma was filled, because there's only one natural lake in Texas, and it is not Lake Texoma, it's Caddo Lake. Lake Texoma, like all of the other lakes around here, is artificial. When Lake Texoma was filled in the 1950s, it permanently altered the weather pattern. And storms that used to pace Sherman, storms that, like the one that knocked Sherman flat to the ground in 1898, now split over the lake. And if you are out in the middle of the lake on a boat, you are guaranteed to be safe, according to everyone I know. And not only will you be safe, you will have some of the best striper fishing of your life. Because when the storm is coming in, the barometric pressure drops, which brings the fish to the surface because striper feed on the surface. And you will have your pick of the fish. And that's where the old wives' facts really come in Sherman. Because I grew up thinking that knowing the barometric pressure was a very important, normal part of life that everybody was constantly checking. And it was only when I moved down south to the Metroplex that I found out that that is as rural gets. When I was in elementary school, all of our teachers had barometers in their classrooms, and they would constantly point out when a storm was coming in and the barometric pressure would drop. Because in the same way that in other parts of the world, people believe that a full moon causes people to act up or makes your minds switch around a little bit differently. In Sherman, everybody knew it was because of the barometric pressure dropping. When we were bad at school on a dark and stormy day, the teachers would point at the barometers and blame the barometer. We had a barometer at home that my mother would check every day before we left the house. It was shaped like St. Teresa of Avila, and it had color-changing paint. And if her habit was brown like it should be, then the weather was going to be fine. If her habit turned blue, we were in for trouble, and it was not going to be a good day. So you better get yourself ready. And as I grew, I am lucky to be someone who lived in the town that I grew up in as an adult. I went to college in Sherman, and then I worked there as an adult for a few years before I moved down here. I worked at the movie theater because in rural Texas, there's not a whole lot to do. The movie theater is the place to be. And I worked there for years. And the things that go on at movie theaters that you just could never daydream of. You would not believe what people sneak in to eat during a movie. Because you would think, liquor sales were banned, and there was a town called Knollwood that solely existed to house a liquor store outside of the city limits. There was one liquor store in the county, and we would find out when they had new things in stock when we found them in the theaters. Fireball started producing new flavors, and I found out because we started finding the little samples. Chewing tobacco, we called them dip cups. We would find chewing tobacco cups in every single theater, always. I go to movie theaters and I smell popcorn, I smell sticky soda, and I smell chewing tobacco. And full family-sized pies from Albertsons that had been eaten, which it had to take a group. I hope it took a group that they were passing that around. Full takeout dinners. Like a whole family got takeout and somehow got it into the theater, and then they left it for us to clean up. Absolutely, I would tell you my advice: never ever touch the floor of a movie theater for any reason. If you drop something, just clean it and then take it home. And at the movie theater, the belief that the barometric pressure was affecting the customers was just a fact. Because when do you go to the movies? On a dark and stormy night, when everything is canceled, whatever you were going to do got canceled, and the whole family's bored, and you need to keep the kids busy, you go to the movies. We were usually packed when it was raining because there was nothing else to do in the entire city. And honestly, those were the fun nights, because we would be running from theater to theater, and there would be something going on everywhere. We would be catching people. There was a movie out called The Gallows that's been forgotten, that as a promotion, they started a viral trend where you do a magic trick with 2 pencils, and you put a grid with yes, no, maybe, and then the weight of the eraser from one of the pencils will cause the pencils to eventually fall and point in whatever direction you decided. And to promote The Gallows, it was about a haunted high school with a ghost named Charlie, and they called it the Charlie Challenge. And we would catch middle school kids sneaking in, because of course this was R-rated. We would catch middle school kids sneaking into the movie to try to summon Charlie with the Charlie Challenge, basically every screening. And it was fun for us. We had fun kicking them out. And we had fun watching them go back in, and we wait until we had everything else taken care of, and then we go kick them out again. And it was entertaining for everybody. It would be a wall of people, and then the lights would go out, and that was fun on its own, because then we got to evacuate the theaters, and we'd go in with our flashlights, and we get to feel like a Girl Scout or a Boy Scout and lead everybody back out to the lobby for a little bit. But also, being as the barometric pressure is dropping when the storm is coming in, those are also the weird nights, because if the weather was going to be really bad, everyone would stay home. And that was when it got choice, because usually they would send most of the employees home, and we would be there by ourselves waiting for whatever came to get us. And it was a dark and stormy night one night, and we knew we were in for something. It was a Thursday night, which meant that we had midnight premieres, so we were going to be open till at least 3 in the morning. We wouldn't close the doors until midnight. And we were all very excited for Thursdays, because usually, especially if it was a dark and stormy night, we would get a visit from the monkey lady. There was a woman who was one of the most popular people in Sherman by far, who ran a monkey sanctuary. And the monkeys, it turns out, are mostly nocturnal, and they also crave social interaction. So if you were out and about after about 11 p.m. in Sherman, probably still to this day, if you were at a gas station or at Whataburger, because those are the 2 other options besides the movie theater, you would run into her, and she would have you come over and say hello to her, whatever monkey she had out with her, because she did a different one every night. And you get to talk to it and learn its name and learn about what type of monkey it was. And we lived to see her. We loved to see her. And there was Hale coming in. There was rotation in the sky. Dale Jones was on KXI telling everybody, I really don't want you out driving tonight. And everyone said, okay, Dale, stay home tonight. My manager had sent all the high school kids home. And it was about 10:30, and in she comes with a macaque on her hip. They're huge. They are huge. And unfortunately, I don't remember the monkey lady's name, but the macaque was named Daryl. And he had a little diaper on, and she paraded him around, and we all got to meet Daryl, and he would sit up on the counter, and we got Daryl a water. And we started off good. And then we had our 10:30 round of movies fill up, and then she moved on to the gas station probably, or Whataburger. And the next one in the door, it was a elderly man with a cane, and I was the only one in the lobby because we had had a very brief power outage that night already. Not long enough to evacuate the theater, which would have made my night, but long enough to screw up the projection times. So the general manager was running from projector to projector, rescheduling the movies. So I was in the lobby by myself with nobody else there, and the gentleman came in very angry already, and he made a beeline for me. And mind you, this was March in Texas, clearly, just like last week, how the weather was last week. And he came up to me with a ticket stub, and he said, "I want to speak to someone. I'm very concerned about an experience I had at this theater." And I said, "What can I do for you, sir?" And he said, "I saw the film Gravity here." And he said, "I don't think I've ever seen such an offensive film in my life." And it's not necessarily a well-known film, but Gravity is, I would not say anything spectacular. It's about an astronaut who gets stuck in space, and then she comes back home and she learns to appreciate life. We showed The Wolf of Wall Street, and I think we had people walk out of every single showing of that, and I understood why. And we showed Captain Phillips, and we had so many people throwing up in the hallway of the theater that we called it the vomit cart. I'm sorry, but we had it fully stocked sitting in the door because we had someone almost every single showing throw up in the theater, and he was offended by Gravity, and he said, "I didn't like the way it was shot. I don't like Sandra Bullock." I said, okay, why are you telling me? And he said, "I sat through that entire film, and I couldn't believe that I had paid money to see it." And I couldn't believe it either, because this was March, and we had shown Gravity in September. And I looked at his ticket stub, and it was from September. And I thought, well, I'm not quite sure what to tell you because, this was months ago. And I said, "Well, sir, I'm sorry you didn't like it." And he said, "I'd like my money back." And, we had a policy that we didn't issue refunds after the film had ended. And his film had ended in September, and it was March. And I said, "Sir, I don't have the ability to issue you a refund, and my manager is busy." I was like, "We had a power outage. It's bad weather tonight." And he said, "Oh, I know. I drove over here." I said, "Why?" And he very irately demanded an explanation for the refund policy. If he didn't like a movie at our movie theater, and he had been so offended by the film, and it was such an awful experience, he left the theater, and he'd been fuming about it ever since. Why couldn't I just give him his money back? So finally, my manager came out, didn't care to hear any of this, and gave him what we called a guest pass, which is a voucher for a free film. And then he turned around to me, and he bought a ticket for one of the premiere movies, and he went to the theater and sat down to watch it. And my manager and me looked at each other, and we looked outside at the sky, and we knew what caused that. We knew. It's just a fact. If we had had a barometer in the theater, we would have been pointing at the barometer. But we weren't done yet, because another employee there, who was very sweet, who unfortunately was easy to get, happened to bring it on herself that she was doing theater checks on The Conjuring, which The Conjuring is a horror movie which famously has a pair of hands that come out of a wardrobe and clap and then go back in. And once that movie premiered, we would go up in the projection booth all the time. Anytime we got a chance, when people were cleaning theaters, and we'd reach our hands up and clap. Perfect way to get somebody. So Raylan had gotten that way multiple times. Not even the first time makes sense, but it would happen on a regular basis. And someone decided that tonight was the night to tell her the story of the Camp Sweeney kid, which the Camp Sweeney kid is not a true story. We made it up. But there is a camp west of Sherman called Camp Sweeney, which is a national destination for children with type 1 diabetes. And they teach the kids how to manage their blood sugar. They give them support. They give them access to other kids who have the same problems. It's a beautiful place, and we're very proud to have it in Sherman. Camp Sweeney, every week, all summer, all spring and summer, because it was spring break, they would bring in the kids for a movie once a week, and we would make them Coke Zeros and popcorn. And they would fill up a theater, and they would hang out in the hallways. And someone decided to start a rumor that one of the kids had been given a real Coke. And that kid, unfortunately, had passed away. And that he was the Camp Sweeney kid. And if you were cleaning a theater by yourself on a dark and stormy night, you may run into him. And it wasn't me, but somebody decided that was the night to tell Raylan. So we were split off into different teams, running around. It was probably 1:30 or 2 in the morning at this point. We were trying to clean the theater up. Most of the building was empty, but if anyone's worked at a movie theater, you know, they never stop showing the films. Even if the theater is empty, they still show the film. So it was a bunch of empty theaters with premiering films playing that no one was watching. And the general manager got up on the catwalk, and he followed Raylan from theater to theater. And he got her every single time. To the point that he came running to find me at some point to say, I can't find Raylan. And I said, well, whose fault is that? And on that dark and stormy night, we did not see her again. She had walked out. So when the wind blows, when that cold gust comes in, that tells you a storm is coming in. When the lightning's starting to pop off in the sky and you can smell the petrichor, that rain smell that comes up out of the ground, and the air starts to feel a little bit lighter, remember Raylan.
All right, thank you, rising star, Johanna Cummins. Our next rising star is Michael Guinn. He is a distinguished spoken word artist, a poet, an actor, and promoter, recognized for his contributions to the arts with multiple awards. As a published poet and former Story Slam champion, he has made significant impact in the literary community. Additionally, Guinn serves as a voting member of both the Grammy Awards and the NAACP Image Awards, further highlighting his influence and commitment to excellence in the creative field. Help me welcome rising star Michael Guinn with Mike's Leap of Faith.
How y'all doing? This is my first time, y'all. High up in a clear blue sky, I rise, soaring in symphonies, gliding up on an orchestra of freedom. I grew up in Jacksonville, Texas, the Piney Woods. That's east down I-20, south on 69, just north of downtown. Back in the 70s, neighborhood gossip was our cultural connection. The town newspaper was our social media, and football fueled our Friday nights. Still does. Our house was a tiny 2-bedroom, 1-bath, way too small for 5 boys, 2 parents, 1 cat, and some very bold mice. Back then we was poor, y'all, so much so that getting hand-me-downs felt like Christmas. And the number one TV show in our house was Good Times. Ain't we lucky we got 'em, da-da-da-da-da-da. You know what to do. Growing up, we used to love to shoot BB guns and hunt and fish and swim and ride go-karts down Keeby Hill. We used to shoot marbles on black knees and brown dirt beneath the blue East Texas sky. One time, I remember I got this idea to unravel a pack of 100 firecrackers. I cut me a rectangular shape, piece out of a brown paper bag, poured the gunpowder onto it, rolled it up real tight, wrapped it in duct tape, all in an attempt to make what I was certain would be my own itty-bitty stick of dynamite. I put it on the anthill, lit the fuse, ran for cover. Boom! It went off and left a big old round circle in what was once a freshly mowed St. Augustine green front yard. Dad was not pleased. I didn't know it then, but my night would be a series of explosive events. Saturday night was Soul Food Saturdays for my Aunt Melvin. At the time, one of the most popular black-owned eateries in East Texas. Always take pride in what you do, she'd say. You never know where it might take you. Her work ethic and professionalism inspired me. She turned 107 last month. When I was 9 years old, my family was burning trash in the backyard and someone unknowingly threw in a spray paint can. It exploded. And I suffered first, second, and third degree burns to my arms and face. Had to have several skin grafts. See what I mean by explosive events? After that, life was not easy for me. I was a scared, scarred, skinny little black boy in a small East Texas town. And if you think teens are cruel now, back then they were brutal. I was already shy, lacked confidence, and looked down on myself. I didn't know it, but that provided an opportunity for me to learn who I truly was. One hot summer, right before middle school, I was watching TV with my 4 brothers. We loved watching TV because that was popcorn and Kool-Aid time. Now, this one movie we watched was called The World's Greatest Athlete, starring Jan Michael Vincent, Tim Conway, and James from Good Times. Now, in this movie, there was this athletic jungle boy being recruited by Olympic scouts. I was mesmerized by his agility and stamina because he could do everything, even fly. I watched him take this bamboo stick and catapult himself through the air, and I knew right then that I, too, was going to fly. Problem is, there are no jungles in East Texas, so no bamboo. So I went down to the old Jacksonville landfill and found me this long, rusty pole and started trying to jump. It was difficult at first. It looked easy on TV, but I practiced every day, and pretty soon I was jumping over everything. You name it, I jumped it. I even jumped over the walls of the tomato bowl, which was illegal, but never mind that. Anyway, my excitement fueled other neighborhood kids to get into it, and we held the first ever hood track meet. Oh, the excitement, the exhilaration. It gave us something to do that didn't involve stealing and fighting. It gave us purpose and goals. When I arrived at Jacksonville Junior High, it was a new and scary world for me. I was self-conscious because of my scars, and that put a huge chip on my shoulder. So I tried to fit in by trying out for sports. But I was too skinny for football, too uncoordinated for basketball, and way too slow for the sprints. But then I saw this boy using a long white pole to jump over a bar, just like I saw on TV. I said, "Hey, coach, can I try that?" "What, pole vault?" "Sure, go ahead." I didn't know that's what it was called, but I grabbed the pole and gave it a go. I fell flat on my assets. But after a while, I got it. I finally found my niche. Finally something I could do, and it literally catapulted me into a world I never imagined. There weren't many African-American pole vaulters in the state at that time, but I made varsity, won regionals, went on the state, and then on to college for a track scholarship. After college, I enlisted in the military. After military, I came home and took a job working at Russ State Psychiatric Hospital. There is where I discovered this gift for gab. I was a natural at de-escalation, conflict resolution, mediation, empowerment. So I decided to go back to school and enrolled at Stephen F. Austin State University and worked on my bachelor's in social work, then on to grad school. After that, I moved to Fort Worth, Texas, and took a job working for Child Protective Services. There is where I discovered poetry and spoken word, or should I say, where poetry and spoken word discovered me. One day, I came in from a real rough day in the field. I came in, slumped down at my desk, put my head down, and I started crying. And when I lifted my head, I had a pen in my hand. And the very first thing I wrote was, "What good is my master's degree if I can't be the master of me?" After that, everything came pouring out. I've been writing ever since. Pole vault and creative writing created this platform for me to elevate my life in ways I could never imagine. It was literally my ticket out of the hood. Now, I'm this published poet and actor and do all those things with the Grammys. But the main thing I get to do is I have the honor of hosting the Story and Poetry Slam tomorrow here. All right? So isn't that amazing? So I live in North Richland Hills, but I thank God for my East Texas roots. And every chance I get, I travel back to East Texas to help create performance platforms just like this one so that other people can feel like we feel. They can get free. Because high up in a clear blue sky, I rise. And nothing will stop my flight because I plan on flying forever. So wings, don't fail me now. I'm almost home.
Rising star Michael Guinn. Our next rising star, Melissa McCurley, is a seventh-generation Texan who's been a realtor, a TV and film actor for the past 25 years. She also taught the 7th grade language arts in Dallas Independent School District and has a passion for children's literacy. From the Little D Denton Storytelling Guild, help me welcome rising star Melissa McCurley with An Unexpected Hero.
Hello. Virginia sat at the cafe table, looking through the window at a poster bearing a sketch of her own face. Wanted, the lady with the limp. We must find and destroy her. She looked down at her wooden left leg and cursed the hollow thump, thump, thump it made with every step. Ah, Cuthbert, they are closing in on us. Cuthbert had been her steady partner these last 8 years, ever since she blew off her left foot, jumping a fence on a pheasant hunting trip in Turkey. She really thought that safety had been on. Cuthbert, her greatest disguise, but now her greatest tell. She sipped her hot, weak, war-ration coffee and thought about the rise of nationalistic socialism she'd witnessed at university in Vienna, and then the growing tensions in Germany and the Soviet Union that she'd reported on almost daily as a secretary at the U.S. Embassy in Poland. And now, this Nazi army, the culmination of it all, murdering its way across her beloved Europe. The posters were everywhere now. Her face, her description, plastered all over France, Marseille, Lyon. This house, safe house, is compromised now. She'd been sleeping in the supply closet at the cafe one night a week these last few months. Damn that Klaus Barbie, that butcher, the head of the Gestapo for Lyon. He was a man who intimately enjoyed torture, responsible for the death of over 4,000 Jews and resistance fighters. He had made it his personal mission to hunt her down. Virginia thought about her 2 missing informants, the aid worker and the black market smuggler, the cardsmith and a hustler. Were they tied up somewhere right now? being beaten or worse? Were they giving up valuable information to the Nazis? She thought about her life back home in Baltimore, the big family estate, the servants. How easy life could have been to wear fancy dresses and be polished, agreeable, to have married that wealthy young man her mother selected. How utterly boring, its own kind of slow, torturous death. "4 p.m. Guards would no doubt have found the hidden liquor bottles by now and be counting down the hours until they could blow off a little steam. Getting the tools smuggled into the prison camp, now that had been the easy part. Weekly sardine cans brought by a local wife to her imprisoned husband on visiting day, with a few items snuggled in. But the radio transistor, that necessary piece of equipment to coordinate the escape with London, that had been a stroke of luck. Who would ever think to check under the wheelchair cushion of a legless, veteran hero priest on his way to give last rites to a dying prisoner? God does work in mysterious ways. She checked through her cache of documents, double-checking each of the special operation agents' new ID, assigned safe house, and passage tickets out of France. It would take a miracle to get all 12 men, safely back home to London. She watched as the sun dipped below the horizon, took her last sip of coffee, and stood up, and then, disguised as Marie, American reporter for the New York Post, shuffled into the supply closet. And a few minutes later, an old French milkmaid exited the cafe, shuffling along, thump, 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 to the train station. She sat watching the French countryside roll by on her way to Malzac, the gunpowder factory turned Nazi prison camp. She marveled at how she'd gotten here, at the perfect score she'd achieved on her first try on the U.S. foreign diplomat exam. How easily she took to languages, mastering fluency in French, German, and Italian in under 4 years. And how she'd been turned down, year after year, for the post of U.S. foreign diplomat. "Huh, looks like we lost your application, ma'am." "Looky there, somebody gave you the wrong address for the in-person interview. You missed it this year." And so on and so on. Because the U.S. government tolerated women in the military as secretaries, as translators or clerks, but certainly not as diplomats. How about as spies? Being a spy was so much more of an adventure than a diplomat. And at least the British saw her value. They taught her navigation and map reading skills, how to build a bomb from everyday materials mixed with plastic explosives, forever ruining the smell of almonds, how to kill silently, and how to psychologically withstand interrogation and torture. Too many contacts, too many friends had already met that end in this war. The old milkmaid exited the train and made her way down to a barn not a quarter mile from the prison camp. She waited. How reckless of those agents to meet all of them at the same safe house. 12, all 12 captured in the Marseille mousetrap. It's a miracle none of them have already been killed. How her fellow agents had chided her about her caution, never sleeping 2 nights in a row in the same place, changing disguises throughout the day, and bonding, sharing with no one. And now all of them captured, and her, the only remaining free British SOE agent in France. And she had to save their hides. Midnight. The guard should be nicely liquored up by now. There, the tower light went out. And now the next. And Virginia closed her eyes and visualized the escape in her mind. 1. Prison barracks key, made from melted sardine cans in a soap mold of the original, opens the cell door. 2. The agents file out, silently, single file, making their way across the now darkened prison yard. 3. The bribed guard, who fancied himself a resistance fighter, cuts the barbed wire fence with makeshift clippers. And each man makes his way to her in the barn, one at a time, to collect their new IDs, disguises, passage tickets, and disappears into the woods. At dawn, Virginia's disinformation agents will spread the story of how they all flew out that night together on an RAF bomber plane. Not too bad of a plan, after all. A week later, an informant brought her a note. A member of her heckler network, a motley crew she'd assembled her first few months on the ground. They'd spent the last year and a half wreaking havoc and terrorizing the Nazi army, moving money, supplies, and ammo and weapons to resistance fighters and allied forces, spying on the Nazis and delivering intel, cutting their communication lines, blowing up bridges and supply trains, and even rescuing downed Allied pilots. She reread the note. Merde, there's a double agent in my network. He had given up her safe houses to the Nazis. All of them. Virginia had to get out of France now. Klaus Barbie, that Gestapo monster, had named her the most dangerous of all Allied spies and upped the reward for her capture. So, travel by boat, air, or train was no longer possible. The next day, Virginia stood at the base of the Pyrenees Mountains and looked up at 8,000 vertical feet of elevation and a 50-mile snowy pass that stood between a torturous death at the hand of the Nazis or her freedom. The winter wind whipped around her and the snow fell, slicking up what was already a treacherous mountain pass. Cuthbert. Looks like it's time for another adventure. And she began to walk. 5 days later, when a bloodied, half-frozen Virginia made her way into Free Spain and radioed London, she discovered that all 12 British agents had made it safely back to London. She would end up serving a second deployment in France, this time for the US, who had come to see her value. And after the war, she would be the first female agent to work for the newly formed Central Intelligence Agency. She never gave a single interview. She also was awarded by the United States the Distinguished Service Cross, which is America's highest honor for extraordinary heroism in combat awarded to civilians. She was named a member of the Order of the British Empire, and France honored her with a Croix de Guerre. She never gave a single interview, and she insisted these awards be given in private ceremonies so she could stay deployable to serve her country until the day she died. And almost no one, not neighbors, nor close friends knew anything about her service until after her death, when the world learned the story of an unexpected hero, Virginia Hall.
So thank you to Rising Star Melissa McCurley. Our next rising star is Venessa Y. Rogers. She is an award-winning storyteller, podcast host, and folklore enthusiast dedicated to exploring global heritage through expressive culture, including legends, mythology, and personal narratives. Holding a BS from UT Austin and an MBA from UTSA, her global perspective was shaped by teaching abroad. As a host of the Fabric of Folklore podcast, Venessa uncovers the origins of fairy tales, folk music, and folk tales. She serves on the boards of the Texas Folklore Society and the San Antonio Storytelling Association, and is currently developing a children's book series inspired by a trio of lively, mischievous muses. From the San Antonio Story Guild of Storytelling Association, help me welcome rising star Venessa Y. Rogers with her story, The Lobo Girl of Devil's River, a Texas folktale.
Most people are familiar with the story of Mowgli, the boy who was raised by wolves, from the Jungle Book. But lost to time was the Texas folktale Lobo Girl, or Wolf Girl of Devil's River. Our story starts in 1835 on the West Texas frontier, bordering what is now Mexico. There's a limestone canyon with stark reliefs and an aquamarine river that cuts deeply through it. It is called Rio Diablo, or Devil's River, named by the settlers because when they came across it, it was so forbidding and so treacherous looking, they felt it was cut by Lucifer's hand himself. If you know Texas history, you are familiar that 1835 was a very significant year because we are on the brink of war with Mexico and the newly self-appointed Santa Anna. Despite the treacherous landscape and the untamed wilderness, settlers continue to move into Texas seeking a new existence, seeking new life. Two such settlers, John Dent, a fugitive from Georgia, and his very pregnant wife, Molly, settle along Devil's River to have a beavers trade, which was a booming trade during the 1830s. One evening, a West Texas storm rolls in. A black wall of clouds buzzing with electricity looms in the sky, and Molly's baby decides now is the time she's going to come into the world. As most babies do, they always pick inconvenient times. So John jumps on his horse and he gallops to the nearest ranch to seek out help for his laboring wife. Unfortunately, he never makes it. The next morning, he's found by the neighboring ranchers, and he's blackened and charred. He's been struck by lightning, still atop his horse. So the ranchers find their way, following his trail to their hut, and they find Molly. She has not survived the birth, and the newborn is nowhere to be seen. But what is seen are wolf tracks all along the hut. Now, John and Molly's story doesn't end there, but 10 years later, a young boy watching his family's goats sees something strange. So he sees some wolves, which was not strange in itself, but with the wolves was something he'd never seen before. It looked like a naked girl. And he ran into town and to tell everybody that he'd seen this really strange sight. And they all laughed in his face. Son, you've been sneaking your daddy's whiskey. Until a year later, an elderly woman, a respected member of the community, corroborated his story and said she would not have believed it until she saw the young naked girl stand up on her hind legs and walk like a human. So it was decided a group of vaqueros, highly skilled ranchers and cowboys, come together to go and rescue the girl and bring her back into the world of man. They trail the wolves for days through the arid desert, through the canyon, through the brush, and they finally trap the wolves in a box canyon. And sure enough, with this pack of wolves is a girl, a naked girl with dirt-matted hair, blue, fierce eyes. She does not come easily, though. She scratches and bites and spits as they wrestle her onto their horse. And they ride her to the nearest ranch house where they loosen her binds. And they offer her food and clothing and blankets, but at every kindness, she spits at them and growls as if she's a wild beast. Now, the mood begins to shift from jubilee to dread as the sun begins to set, because Lobo Girl begins to howl. Her howling is unearthly, inhuman, but what really sends the ice down the veins of the men outside is that they begin to hear a reply. At first, it's just in the distance, and it's just a few. But as she continues her howl of distress, more and more wolves enter the chorus. And it sounds as if they're getting closer. And as darkness descends, it's as if every single wolf in the entire desert is howling in unison. The men are white-knuckling their weapons in trepidation. And then silence. An eerie silence descends upon the land. Screams of fear and pain emanate from the cows and the goats. Sheer mayhem ensues as the wolves attack the ranch. As soon as the wolves have scattered and they've gotten all of the animals calmed and safe, they go to check on Lobo Girl. But she's not there. She's escaped. She's gnawed her ropes loose and she's pried the wood planks off the windows and she's crawled out into the night to join her wolf family. She's not seen again until 1952 when a group of surveyors along Devil's River see a young woman, a young naked woman, on the sandbar, and some of them say that she's nursing 2 wolf pups. They pursue her, but she vanishes into the breaks before they're able to follow with their horses. Many imagine that Lobo Girl raised her own pups under the mesquite and stars. And folks in Devil's River say that sometimes they hear a howl that sounds not quite wolf, but not quite human either. And they remember Lobo Girl, how she had 1 foot in our world and 1 forever in the wild. Thank you.
All right, Thank you to rising star Venessa Rogers. Come up on the stage. All of our rising stars. And I know that our schedule ran long, but wasn't that some amazing rising stars? Wow.